time stood still on many of the short-line railroads of the South as steam action continued to roll into the 1960s. By then, tourist steam railroads were beginning to pop up around the U.S. The Rebel Railroad was one of them. But that's not what this tape is about. Operating steam short lines were a lingering, living microcosm of the big roads of over a decade earlier, to be savored while they lasted. You can almost smell the pungent coal smoke. Coal was the primary freight of many steam short lines. With this sustenance so readily available, many short lines were reluctant to spend money for the new unknown diesel technology. The Moorhead and North Fork operated a pair of 060 switchers and a 262 as it trundled coal over 4 miles of track out of Moorhead, Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is prime coal country. The Moorhead and North Fork switchers work the mine trackage near Clearfield for movement to the junction with the Chesapeake and Ohio at Moorhead. The Moorhead and North Fork operated into the late 1960s when it was closed down. An attempt to reopen the line as the Moorhead and Morgan Fork Railroad failed when the Chesapeake and Ohio abandoned the connecting track. The interchange at Moorhead is being switched. The railroad's yellow office building is to the left. Another coal hauler was West Virginia's Buffalo Creek and Gully. Until the railroad ceased running in 1964, a trio of hefty consolidations brought long trains of 70 to 90 cars down the 18-mile main line from Wyden to the Baltimore and Ohio at Dundon, right in the center of the state. The Buffalo Creek and Gauley locomotives were not necessarily beautiful, but they had the brute strength to get the job done. The track you see here is still in place, but under a heavy growth of brush. The BC&G closed in early 1964, and its steam locomotives were sold. The road was reopened briefly with diesel power in 1968 and shut down again. Today, the rails deep in the valley slumber under heavy overgrowth, awaiting another rebirth. Will it happen? You can ride behind a former Buffalo Creek and Gauley steam locomotive, number 4. The Baldwin 280, built in 1926, renumbered 604, often powers weekend tours at the North Carolina Transportation Museum at Spencer. The western fringe of the Commonwealth of Virginia, not far from Lynchburg and Roanoke, is near coal country. But one steam-powered railroad in the region, the Virginia Blue Ridge, was a chemical hauler. In fact, it was environmental concerns over its primary mineral, cyanide, which eventually resulted in its closure. One of the Virginia Blue Ridge's 4 hefty 6-wheel switchers is working at the junction with the Southern Railway at Tye River. Steam on the Virginia Blue Ridge lasted until 1964. The railroad ran with diesels until 1980 when it closed down. Abandonment occurred in 1984. Meanwhile, back at Tye River, the Southern Railway had a track crew hard at work installing a new switch. It was a hot day at the junction. Even as the turnout was being tugged into place, another Virginia Blue Ridge steamer was bearing down on Tye River. The steam train leaves Tye River. Part way up the mountain, it's time to pause for water from a tank car body set out alongside the track. The Tweetsee Railroad ran a 3-foot gauge theme park at Blowing Rock, North Carolina. The standard gauge surviving segment of the old original narrow gauge Tweetsee was the East Tennessee in western North Carolina, from Johnson City, Tennessee to Elizabethton, 11 miles. Until the late 1960s, when the Southern Railway traded 2 diesel locomotives for the Shortlines 2 consolidations as reinforcements for the Southern's then expanding steam program, the ET and WNC was one of the very last bastions of steam. One of the last places in the United States where steam interchanged with steam was at Elizabethton, Tennessee. The North American Rayon Company had an 060 fireless cooker, a locomotive which had no fire and received its steam from an external plant. Here it's shown exchanging cars with the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina's consolidation. Steep grades and shay-geared locomotives were the distinctive trademarks of North Carolina's Graham County Railroad, which ran steam into the late 1960s. Two shays were the motive power on the Graham County, which handled both freight trains and tourist passenger trains. The line shut down in 1968, reopened from 1973 to 75, and ran one last time with a diesel in 1983 and 1984. This caboose hop is leaving the connection with the Southern Railway's Murphy branch at Topton. The Murphy branch has been reborn in recent years as the Great Smoky Mountain Railway, which runs excursions behind steam and diesels. One of the Graham County shay locomotives moves along with the train between Topton and Robbinsville. The railroad is now completely gone. One of the shays is at the Transportation Museum at Spencer. A long and eclectic list of steam locomotives was used by the Southern Railway and Norfolk Southern Railway on their steam program from 1966 to 1994. A popular member of the select fraternity was number 750, a Pacific built in 1910 by Alco for the Savannah and Atlanta Railroad. The rugged 462 proves in these sequences that it could move right along with an excursion train. It later steamed for the new Georgia Railroad out of Atlanta, and today It is on display at the Southeastern Railway Museum at Duluth, Georgia. The most famous steam locomotive in North America is almost certainly the General, immortalized by the great locomotive chase in 1862. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad received abundant publicity by steaming the venerable locomotive during the centennial of the Civil War. South Carolina's Rockton and Ryan Railway liked steam so much that the Rockhauler bought its last steam locomotive in 1961. Although the 12-mile railroad was dieselized in 1964 and stopped running in 1981, two of the R&R steam locomotives are still in the quarry at Ryan. The South Carolina Railroad Museum in Rockton is working to restore the railroad. The Brimstone Railroad operated two 3-truck Shay geared locomotives to bring coal to the junction with the Southern Railway at New River, Tennessee. Shays were designed for low-speed movement of heavy loads over rough track and up steep grades. The Brimstone Shays had their work cut out for them as they moved coal out of Little Creek over 12 miles of grass-covered track. One of the Shays pauses to pick up a gondola. The Shays were retired when the Southern Railway purchased the line in 1965. Deep in the forest and valley of southern Kentucky, the 11-mile Kentucky and Tennessee Railway operated 3 Macados between Oz and Stearns until 1964. Coal traffic on the K&T ended in 1988. Much of the line is used today only for the summer passenger excursion trains of the Big South Fork Scenic Railway. When it shut down in 1970, the Mobile and Gulf Railroad, running from Brownville to Buell, Alabama, was the last steam-powered common carrier in the United States. Ancient Mogul number 97 ran to the end. Number 76 of the Mississippian Railway made short work of running over 24 miles of light rail between Amory and Fulton in northeastern Mississippi. This was relatively unhurried steam railroading in the South, often using second-hand steam power which had been purchased from the mainline railroads. The mainline connection at Amory is being switched. Today, a pair of diesels power the Mississippian trains. Southeastern Mississippi was the location of a steam short line with a long and almost melodic name, the Von Homey and Hattiesburg Southern. Although the rails were first spiked down in the decade following the Civil War, the B&HS did not emerge as a separate company owned by the Tatum Lumber Company of Hattiesburg until 1925. Motive power was the first order of business for the new railroad. Tatum Lumber promptly ordered new locomotives from Baldwin, including 262 number 250, shown in these scenes, and 282 number 300. With its thirst quenched, number 250 gets underway through the pine forests south of Hattiesburg. Number 250 soon bears down on the only open agency station on the railroad at New Augusta. Following dieselization of the railroad in 1961, number 250 left on a strange journey that took it to the Wanamaker, Kempton, and Southern in Pennsylvania, and then to the Wolfboro Railroad in New Hampshire. The Wolfboro is closed, but the pert little prairie was still in New Hampshire at last reports. Number 300 stayed much closer to home, going on display in a Hattiesburg park. Many of these crossing gates were once used throughout the South, where two railroads crossed or interchanged. The Von Homey and Hattiesburg Southern was taken over in the late 1960s by the Illinois Central. With the work at the interchange at Beaumont finished, number 250 leads its train back to Hattiesburg, across a piled trestle and through rolling grasslands. It whistles past the station at New Augusta. Back at Hattiesburg, number 250 backs to the engine terminal, where it joins number 300 to be bedded down for the night. Deep in the heart of East Texas, one of the last steam-powered mixed trains in the country starts its run on the Moscow, Camden, and San Augustine Railroad. On the end of the train is a pristine wood combine used many years before on the Long Island Railroad. On the head end today is number 6, a venerable consolidation with striping on its cab and tender, built by Baldwin in 1910. Every weekday afternoon at 2:30, the mixed train, listed in the official guide as number 1, whistled off from the station at Camden for the nearly 7-mile run to Moscow and a connection with the Southern Pacific. While San Augustine, nearly 60 miles to the north, appeared in the railroad's name, no serious effort was made to extend the track after Moscow and Camden were connected by rail in 1898. Much of the railroad traverses level ground through pine forests. At Moscow, consolidation number 6 is turned on the Armstrong turntable before it switches to the Southern Pacific interchange, making up its train for the return to Camden. Number 6 is now at the Texas Transportation Museum at San Antonio. These scenes were shot over several visits to the railroad. Here is 260 number 201, a mogul which came from the 5-foot gauge Panama Railroad. Number 201 has a much more Spartan paint scheme without the striping. A few years later, a Macady number 14 came to the railroad from the parent company, the W.T. Carter and Brother Lumber Company. Despite the just under 7 miles of track separating Moscow and Camden, the MC and SA continue to operate its mixed train, with many fans coming from throughout the country to pay 50 cents for a ride. The mixed trains continued with the former Long Island Combine, even after the Moscow, Camden, and San Augustine was belatedly dieselized. Passenger service was discontinued in 1973, 4 years after Champion International bought the lumber company and its railroad. It's time for the train to return to Camden. And there is a paying passenger. In a timeless scene, the steam mixed train rolls through the pine forest that lines most of the railroad between the two communities. With steam leaking from numerous places on the locomotive, Number 6's days in revenue service are clearly numbered. The locomotive is serviced at Camden before being put away for the night. Steam in the South. Long after the large railroads had embraced diesels, many of the short lines were still operating steam power. Because of this, many of the locomotives shown in this video survive today, often as cold relics of this earlier happy era, when steam still ruled the short lines of the South.